When we were little, we used to play some lovely games. One of them involved pinching my grand's trays, putting the tray on top of the stairs and sliding down, with whoever falling off before they got to the bottom being the loser. One day Ivor wanted to go, and when he wanted to go, then he really had to have a go. Len stood behind him as he was getting ready and gave him a head start with his foot. Well, he flew down the stairs, fell off and broke his arm. Once again, to our strange young minds, this was hysterically funny, and it made our day until Gran got the stick down and we all had a quick crack for our naughty and spiteful behaviour towards Ivor. Another time we had an old broken down bike to play with. Len put these bogey wheels on it, that means wheels with no tyres, and we went over to the hill at Brook Street to ride down. It was fun, but the only way you could stop was by crashing into the railway railings at the bottom. When you think about things like this, it makes you realise that we must have been very stupid children, especially when you considered that to get to the railings we had to go across a road. We also had a piece of wood with 4 wheels on it that we used to steer with a piece of string. Again, we'd shoot down from the top of the hill, whizzing past friends who never thought of trying to help you stop, flying into the railings at the bottom. I don't know how any of us never got taken to hospital with broken limbs. When I was about 8, they built a youth club right across the road from where I lived. That was great, and we could go over there to play table tennis, basketball and other games, and the hall was also hired out for different occasions. There were competitions between us and other clubs, and it was organised by Mr. and Mrs. Burrows. Their son Stuart was later to become a very famous singer, and he's still around now. Whenever he comes on the television, I always say that I knew him when I was young. About this time, a lot of army billets were being built for American soldiers, and we used to go over to the white tips and shout, "Any gum, chum," to the Yanks. Sure enough, they would come over and give us chewing gum and chocolate. Len is still in touch with many of his childhood friends from all those years ago because he still lives in the area, in Porth, which is quite near Ponty. As I moved away to Swansea, I lost touch with most of my childhood friends. Grandpa Thomas was a funny man who would never call me Jean because he didn't like that name. Instead, he decided to call me Jenny. I wasn't brainy or anything, and Gran used to say he called me Jenny as that was a donkey's name. Len had a rabbit, and he was always being asked to clean the hutch, but he wouldn't. He was always saying that he'd do it later. One day, the rabbit disappeared, and Gran said that it must have escaped from its hutch, so we didn't think anything more of it. That evening, we sat up for our meal, and you'd never guess what we had. Rabbit stew. Guess where the rabbit went? I bet you can't. In the community, Mrs. Thackerell lived in the next street and used to make toffee apples and toffee walking sticks. Man would give us some money and we'd run up to Mrs. Thackerell's to buy what we could, a toffee apple or 2 walking sticks for a penny. We always used to share. If we didn't, then we'd have nothing. Mr. Harris was the big local policeman, tall with a hard hat. He'd walk the streets, and if you ever misbehaved, he'd call into the house to tell the family who had done what, then have a chat while he was there about the weather or the football. As he was going, he'd say that he'd give you a clip around the ear and ask if the family minded. Nobody would disagree with the police, and clips around the ear were common if you did wrong. If ever we didn't let his daughter Sonia play with us, she threatened to tell her father, and then she'd be our best friend all of a sudden. I remember the day that the local tramp banged on our front window asking if we had any odd jobs for him to do. Len and Mars ran out of the room and held the door closed with me inside as the tramp banged on the window. He frightened me to death, but he was only trying to make a few bob. That was how he earned money. None of the kids would go near him. Just after the war, there was about 13 or 14 of us living in my grand's house in Collins Terrace, and we had a letter from the council to say that we'd been allotted a house, 60 Oak Street, Rydfelin, and we could go down and have a look at it. I always remember going down with Mam. She had the key and opened up. Downstairs there were 3 rooms and an outdoor toilet. Upstairs there were 2 big bedrooms and a little box room, and then we had, and we really couldn't believe how marvellous this was, a bathroom with an indoor toilet. We were like maniacs running around the house. not able to believe that this was where we were going to live. As ours was one of the first houses to be finished, all the roads were just dirt tracks, but it wasn't long before our new neighbours started to arrive.